My experience with hustle culture started in college. I wasn't especially driven as a kid. I did all right academically, but was a slacker through my years in high school, mostly because I didn't really see myself being able to afford college, and so I wasn't all that concerned with going the extra mile in my studies at the time. When I went to college, however, and especially when I transferred to UCSB for my upper division coursework, I became much more aware of how competitive the job market is, and of the importance of doing one's best to distinguish oneself when it comes time for job interviews and things of that character. One of the things that I learned was that education never really ends, and that there's always room for improvement. So I decided to continue pushing myself to try new things and develop new skill sets. After college, I got a job, but there wasn't much room for advancement there, so I started looking for volunteer work. I started helping a small local theater company with set building. Then I started acting on stage, and before I knew it, I was on their board of directors, learning how to write grant proposals and run the box office. Before I had even realized it, I'd penciled in every spare moment of time with something to do, and it didn't take long before I started feeling the strain of having too much on my plate. I started looking for things that would help keep me pumped up and moving forward, which led me to the world of motivational speaking, and that's where I first heard the language of hustle and grind. The speakers were energetic, their message was undeniably dynamic, and I definitely found undiscovered reservoirs of tenacity and strength to push through the fatigue that I was feeling. But eventually, even this new source of inspiration was unable to keep me going. And what's more, I started noticing aspects of the messaging that struck me as being problematic. Things like the emphasis on constant effort and improvement, the tendency among some speakers to denigrate resting as weak or unbefitting one who has decided to seek out greatness at all costs. There was a harshness to the language, a brutality that I hadn't paid as much attention to at first, because it felt necessary at the time. When the opportunity presented itself, I began pulling back from some of the responsibilities that I had taken on. I had reached my limit, and knew that moving forward at that pace would have resulted in disaster at some point. Besides all that, I was getting ready to start grad school, and knew that I couldn't take on any new challenges before making room on my plate for them. Fast forward to this class. When the opportunity to choose a topic for the research project came up, I didn't immediately settle on hustle culture, the gig economy, and how social media brings it all together. I first chose the book I'd be reading for the book review. I decided on Progress Without People by David F. Noble, and I found his thesis fascinating about how technology is threatening to make human workers obsolete. And that got me thinking about how competitive it is to find work today. And that was what got me thinking about hustle culture again. So I started looking for source material. Because I had some previous experience with motivational speakers and YouTube channels like Motiversity, I already knew where to find pro-hustle culture content. Thankfully, it was just as easy to find anti-hustle culture content, as there's a vibrant debate going on about this topic on social media right now. I found some great TED Talks, both pro and con, on both the gig economy and on hustle culture. When I went looking for scholarly content, I found there's already been quite a few pieces written on these subjects, and just like in the less scholarly sources, I found a degree of ambivalence on the topic at hand that might be best summed up by a quote from a paper titled "Moonlighting to the Side Hustle: The Effect of Working an Extra Job on Household Poverty for Households with Less Formal Education" by Jennifer Scott, Catherine Edwards, and Alexandra Stanzik, in which the authors wrote, quote, "We found that working more than one job does help raise households out of poverty, even if marginally, and appears to better serve those households that are consistently engaging in this strategy. These households with a member who consistently works more than one job may be better positioned to support this extra job via shorter hours and higher wages at the primary job. The jury is out, however, as to whether these economic benefits outweigh the costs, as the limited research on multiple job holding and other dimensions of well-being suggests a negative impact on work-life balance." Unquote. So, my paper is going to look primarily at three things. 1. The nature of the gig economy. its definition and primary characteristics, and what has brought it to such a place of prominence within the context of the greater economy today. 2. The nature of hustle culture, its origins, and its relationship to the gig economy. Finally, I'll be examining the role that social media has played in the rise of these two distinct phenomena, as well as the many interrelationships that now exist between these three things. I hope that my findings will intrigue you as much as they have intrigued me.